The Pod News Weekly Review uses chapters, so you can skip from story to story.
The last word in podcasting news. This is the Pod News Weekly Review with James Cridland and Sam Sethi.
I'm James Cridland, the editor of Pod News.
And I'm Sam Sethi, the CEO of True Fans.
I'm a little bit snippy about the folks who get agitated about video and argue about, well, is it a podcast or not? Video does not cannibalize audio, it's additive.
Steve Ackerman has big news to share with us. Plus,
right now, creators want fewer apps and a cleaner workflow.
Jay LeBeuf from Adobe Podcast on the new features for podcasters. And the latest from the Edison Research Infinite Dial. And maybe we find out why James is too lazy to voice this bit. This podcast is sponsored by Buzzsprout for the tools, support, and community to ensure you keep podcasting. Start podcasting, keep podcasting with Buzzsprout.com.
From your daily newsletter, the Pod News Weekly Review.
Yesterday, you co-hosted the Edison Research. Is it Edison Research or Edison SSRS?
It's Edison Research at SSRS because they were bought by SSRS late last year, and that's helped them do an awful lot more stuff. But yes, so Edison Research at SSRS launched the Infinite Dial yesterday, and at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, there I was with VP of Research there, Megan Lazovic, talking about all of the new data, which was absolutely fascinating. Some really interesting data about radio and important numbers in terms of podcasting as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of the data that you've presented. One of the first things that jumps out is in-car use.
Yeah.
But the thing it says right at the bottom is podcasts not asked. That doesn't make sense to me.
No, well, back in 2016, they didn't bother asking about whether you listened to podcasts in cars because kind of nobody really was at that point. At least that was the theory, at least. So yeah, I mean, that was one of the big things. So podcasts are the number 3 thing after AM/FM radio, which is number 1. And online audio, that's things like music from Spotify and that sort of thing at number 2. Podcasts are there at number 3 in terms of people. Edison's Infinite Dial measures people, not necessarily consumption, time spent listening. So it just measures people. But 37% of people say that they currently listen to podcasts in their car, as do I. So that is a big change. You would have assumed from 10 years ago. But I mean, you know, it gets even more interesting when you start having a look at individual age groups. Over half of all Americans who have driven in a car or ridden in a car last month have listened to a podcast in them. If you're looking at young Americans, again, people under the age of 34, then 73% listening to online audio, 65% listening to AM/FM radio. So AM/FM radio isn't actually number 1 for them, for that particular age group. So some fascinating information there, and you know, and you could see from some of the other data that they had about AI and some of the other data that there's very clear changes to the over 55s there, and that's the thing that I think is most interesting, given that I get into that age bracket next week.
Welcome.
So that's probably
welcome.
Yes, I mean, you're nearly out of it now.
So moving away from car, they started to also talk about share of ear. What was going on there?
So Edison also do 2 other pieces of data. Edison share of ear, which is time spent listening to audio. So Infinite Dial measures the people. Edison share of ear measures the time. And there was a fascinating graph, which I've never seen Edison produce before. And it was showing daily podcast consumption time as a percentage by the app that they're using. And I have always been saying, if you remember, I've always been saying YouTube is number 1 in terms of people, but it isn't necessarily number 1 in terms of consumption. I've normally been saying, because I've been looking at other data, that Apple is number 1 and that YouTube and Spotify are both kind of number 2. That's not what this data shows you. And what this data shows you very clearly is that 32% of all time with podcasts in the US is spent with YouTube, 25% with Spotify, 20% with Apple Podcasts. That's a big change to where we were. And it does seem to show that YouTube is number one for podcasts, whether you're thinking about people or whether you're thinking about time spent listened as well.
Mm. Now, why is that changing? I mean, are we seeing the algorithm that YouTube provides giving us more content quicker? What's giving the YouTube the edge?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. I mean, it's certainly not how people listen to this show, and one would assume it's not necessarily how people listen to a bunch of other shows out there. I guess some of it comes back to what is the definition of a podcast, and I know I'm a boring, worn record on that, but that's kind of important in things like this. To actually understand. So what is a podcast? What are people calling a podcast? And of course, where will Netflix, Hulu, all of these sorts of things be on this list this time next year? Who knows there as well.
Moving on then, monthly podcast consumption was another statistic that they put out. What was the overall arching view of this?
Yeah, so this is basically the number that anyone cares about. It's the amount of Americans who've listened to or watched a podcast over the last month. And they asked, listened to or watched both last year and this year. And the figure is up again. It's another record. 58% of all Americans aged 12 plus are listening to podcasts. That's 167 million people. And what I thought was interesting, and I highlighted it at the time, is that the weekly podcast consumption number is 45%, but that has grown faster than the monthly one. So to me, that kind of makes me assume that people are listening to more podcasts. They're listening more often, which is why the weekly number has gone up faster than the monthly number has. So all good news for podcasting. There's a ton of detail in here, and thanks to SiriusXM Media, which is the sponsor, they've given a ton of top-line information away for free, so you can go and take a peek at that, and of course go and watch me with Megan doing the whole reveal, which was quite good fun. You can go and do that at the Edison Research website, which is at edisonresearch.com.
Nice. Again, I think I need to delve back into the full set of information, because I think there's a lot there to pack out. Now, moving on, James, Podbean and gone. This was something that you noted on the WhatsApp group. Podcast hosting company Podbean has abruptly pulled its dynamic ad insertion tool across the whole of Europe. Now, why have they done this, James?
Well, why have they done it? Indeed. The company has told us that the decision was based on a combination of evolving global privacy regulations and a shift in our internal product focus. Now, that doesn't necessarily explain why they just yanked it without any warning whatsoever, which has really put some people in the lurch. So this pod ads thing that they had was a dynamic ad insertion tool that you could use to insert your own ads that you had sold. And so all of a sudden, you're going to get all of these Podbean customers who are no longer able to actually insert those ads that they have sold into their podcast. I mean, that's a massive big deal. So to pull that without any warning whatsoever is a bit strange. Now, if you look at where they have pulled the insertion tool, you can probably guess that there is something to do with GDPR in there, because it's basically every single GDPR country it's been pulled from. But it was an instant thing, and that I just find that really a really weird way of talking to your customers, of taking care of your customers and everything else. I've had a load of people saying, this has had a huge impact. Who would you recommend? And if you're not doing anything particularly complicated, then Buzzsprout, our sponsor, is great. It's got its own DAI service, which is completely free. So you can use that. If you're doing something which is a bit more complicated and you need, scheduling and all of that kind of stuff, then Captivate is probably a good choice for you. They've got a tool called Amy. I used to be an advisor for them a long time ago. But yeah, it's a really, really fascinating thing. It's not the only thing that they've got rid of as well.
Yeah, this one surprised me. I mean, they're getting rid of their live stream product as of June. Now, give me a minute. Didn't we just predict that live is probably going to be the next big thing we've been waiting for in podcasting? And they've got, 65,000 shows, it says here.
Yes.
65,000 shows, and they're going to get rid of it. Why?
Yes. 16 million live stream minutes. 5.8 million people have watched one of these shows. And they're getting rid of it. And they're getting rid of it because, oh, yes, it's all AI, isn't it? Reallocating resources towards AI features. Just very strange. I don't really understand the whole Podbean thing. There must be some kind of legal thing, you would assume, mustn't there? I mean, but who knows?
Moving on then, James. Another company I really don't understand because I don't use their products is Adobe. Now, a friend of the show, Jay LeBeuf, who used to be at Descript, is now heading up their podcasting and AI initiatives. But they've announced a couple of new enhancements to their products. What have they said, James?
Yeah, so they've announced a number of things. They've got an enhanced speech service, which I've used in the past. That now has source separation, so you can remove music from the background, which is actually very useful in case you want to take a clip, but you don't want the copyrighted music behind it. And then you can do that too. It's got a remote recording tool, which I'm sure that Riverside are delighted about, which does it in video and in audio as well. And there's a few other, little tricks there in terms of multi-track upload and everything else. But they certainly seem to be moving fast.
Yeah, is this a threat, as you said, to Riverside, but also Descript? I mean, is it going to be... have they woken up and said, right, we're going to be the all-in-one solution for creators, audio, video, recording, enhancement, editing, all in one place?
I mean, Adobe has always been someone which quite a lot of creators have used for, many different things. And very clearly they are beginning to have a more complete workflow now in terms of audio and video. If I was Riverside, if I was Descript, I would be worried because Adobe clearly has a much bigger brand and arguably a much more trusted brand just because it's so big. It's been going for a long time and everybody, by and large has at least used an Adobe product at some stage in their life, even if they're not using it now. So I think, it's certainly a big sort of elephant has just jumped into this particular room. What they don't do, of course, is podcast hosting, which Riverside does. What they are really leading on here is not necessarily video, but audio, although they do video as well. But maybe that's something to do with making sure that they don't upset their video customers. But yeah, I find all of it absolutely fascinating. So you caught up with Jay LeBeuf from Adobe. What did you start by asking him?
Well, I asked him to tell me about the products at Adobe because you've got Adobe Podcast, Adobe Premium, and you've got Adobe Firefly. And I just didn't know how they all fit together. So I asked him, what are the ones that you're looking after and how do they fit with podcast creators?
We have this expression within Adobe, don't ship your org chart. It's a massive company that serves a lot of creators. So let me explain it through a creator lens. Let's imagine you're a podcaster. Today's the day you want to do something. You arrive at the Adobe website. You're trying to wrap your head around it. Honestly, this took me months to wrap my own head around. We have, I'd say, 3 tools that you really should be considering. Adobe Podcast, Adobe Premiere, and Adobe Firefly. So what's the difference? Adobe Podcast is the tool for entry-level creators or creators who really just have some specific jobs to be done. They want to get in, get out, not spend nights and weekends meticulously laboring over their creations. And podcast has always been the tool we want to provide to just be the simplest, most reliable, friendly, and honestly fun tool. There's not a lot of fun tools out there, and I think podcast hits that goal. Premiere Pro is already known as the industry standard for film, TV, YouTube creation. But as podcasts are increasingly becoming video first, most of the top shows, for example, on Spotify, and Spotify themselves, uses Premiere to edit it. You're editing shows as if it's like a multi-cam TV workflow. And Premiere has all that built in, but Premiere has a ton of audio capabilities that I don't think people have been paying attention to. And then last, Adobe Firefly. Adobe Firefly, relatively new product and surface for Adobe, and it's our AI first creation platform. So where we're seeing that being used, if you needed to do an ad read, if you wanted to experiment with having some synthetic guests, you could actually go in. We have text to speech, we have generative music, we have generative sound effects, everything commercially safe there for you to use to then bring into your other surfaces. And we also have a video editor in Firefly too.
So those products basically are available. They're all online products. You don't download anything anymore. They're all SaaS, I assume. So you just log in and access them that way.
Actually, Premiere Pro is still downloadable Mac Windows.
So now let's say that I'm a podcaster. Do you envisage me going from Adobe Podcast to Premiere when I go into video from audio? Is that the transition that you're looking at?
One of the trends that I'm seeing is creators want fewer apps, and the industry bounces between bundling and unbundling and bundling again and unbundling. Right now, creators want fewer apps and a cleaner workflow. So what we want is for creators to kind of spend the time thinking through how much time and effort do they want to spend creating, and also just what tool resonates most with their workflow. So with Adobe Podcast, for example, Podcast is a simple, straightforward tool that provides you everything from recording to editing to production to then clipping and publishing out your content as audio and video clips. You can do everything there. Whereas Premiere is more focused on editorial, like the editorial process. So similar to Podcast, where you can do text-based audio editing, approach that Premiere takes is you can also do all of the rich audio and video edits that you would expect to do in a modern DAW, in a modern nonlinear editor, augmented by AI. So Premiere is a deeper tool, professional grade tool, and it is worth learning. But some people really just prefer the ease of use of podcast.
Just in my brain, I'm just thinking Adobe Podcast Pro. No, maybe. Anyway, I'll ignore that. Now, you've got some new announcements coming out. What are they?
So earlier this year, I provided Pod News some of my predictions for 2026. And we also debuted a whole bunch of stuff at Adobe Max, which is our creativity conference last October. Part of the predictions, part of what we were showcasing is the ability to split audio into layers. And, for the longest time, Sam, I mean, you've been working in audio and radio for a long time. Usually the recording is what it is. And maybe you can notch out certain frequencies. Maybe you can do some noise removal. But we've never really had the ability to do source separation. On the image side, we're used to being able to click and hold and remove background and click and hold and click on one person, just remove them. That's been possible on the image side. We're adding that on audio. So shipping today, probably when everybody hears this, Adobe Podcast's enhanced speech module, which is what people use to make their audio and videos just sound better, now includes a new music control. So now it automatically splits the audio into speech, music, and background. So you get 3 separate layers to work with. The interface makes it super easy to work with. You have dedicated sliders and mute controls for all of them. So real example workflow, I end up filming a video and I'm right outside of a stadium. You can hear music playing in the background. That is copyrighted music owned by Universal Music Group playing in the background. Now, it might not bother me as I'm recording, but as soon as I publish it to YouTube, you do not have the rights for that. Now, you get a message saying that UMG is going to monetize your content. Or if you're actually trying to put ads in there, it's going to get taken down. And I work with tons of creators and also a lot of companies that just need the copyrighted music removed either so they can replace it with something else or just repurpose episodes, just get rid of it. So the music removal, not only the slider, but also the dedicated mute control, solves a huge problem that people have. And we're really excited to have that. So that's in the Adobe Podcast surface. Layerization of audio. I think you can also do that people have been asking for a while is to be able to download the audio as individual stems. So now we split it into speech, music, and background. This is a great example where if that's all you're going to do and you want to take those stems and you want to bring it into your favorite digital audio workstation that you've been using for years, go for it. That's great. It should be part of your workflow.
And what's the other announcement that you're making?
So as we see more and more tools head towards video workflows, you and I are recording this right now. We're primarily recording audio through remote recording, but we're also recording video too, just in case. Adobe Podcast is now shipping remote video recording. We've had remote recording for audio only since it launched, 2.5 years ago, and it's become incredibly reliable. It's the best surface that Adobe offers for recording. Now we add video in there. So you can add, I believe, up to 5 guests, do very fluid video recording, is synced to the cloud. You can download the individual stems. And again, if you want to complete your workflow in Adobe Premiere and edit it like a multicam TV show, go for it. If you want to finish your remote video recording, have it all instantly transcribed with active speaker view on with one click, you can do that in Adobe Podcast. Brings together a lot of hard work. It turns out shipping video recording, very, very hard, very challenging, but the team has a great approach. It's incredibly reliable, and we're going to start seeing it rolled out when people are listening to this.
So the third leg of the Adobe products is Firefly. You've talked about the use of AI in both Podcast and Premiere Pro. So what does this product do then that the other two, which have AI already built in, don't? Why have a third product?
Well, I have a third product. We needed an AI first situation, or stated another way, we needed an AI first surface. In the same way that I mentioned earlier that creators favor end-to-end surfaces, they also favor things that are purpose-built for what they're trying to accomplish. So you rarely get a chance to start from scratch. Firefly has been that opportunity for Adobe. And what we're doing is starting out by building some of the basic building blocks for good AI audio. So what we shipped in October that we haven't covered here, but I think people need to know about, we shipped 3 modules: generate sound effects, generate soundtrack, and generate speech. So generate sound effects is our own foundation model. So all these models are things that Adobe has built. I feel very lucky to work at a company that has the resources to build our own foundation models with our own licensed training data, where creators have been properly compensated. It is all commercially safe, so creators have no worries about where the content came from and what they could use it for. And in the case of the sound effects model, you can type in a prompt to create your own sound effects, your own ambient sounds. You can use your voice to actually control how that sound comes out. So the example we always give is, let's imagine you need a droning sound in your show. You can type in the type of ambient drone that you're looking for and then use your voice to do the wow, wow, wow type modulation. We'll combine those 2 inputs and then you get a rich output.
Don't tell Ed Sheeran that he does all his music like this. Don't tell Ed Sheeran.
Well, let's imagine you need music for your show. Let's imagine you need a theme song. Let's imagine you need some interstitial music, during your ad reads or something. You might be plagued by getting copyright strikes, or you're bored because you're using the same royalty-free music that you downloaded 10 years ago. It's time to move on, time to have some additional choices. So we have the generate soundtrack module in Firefly, which allows you to just simply describe what you want. But the way in which we do it, it's not, here's a text prompt, good luck, but rather we give you some mood tags. We give you some vibe tags. We give you some energy tags. Kind of take us back to, you remember the descriptors in Last FM? You would listen to a track and you would get all these cool descriptors back and just type in what you want. Well, that's kind of what we have now, where you can just tell the system through selecting through a few tags roughly what you want, or you can upload a piece of video content and we will automatically detect what's going on in that video and try to help you create a soundtrack for it. Now, it's clear for everybody listening in to know that we're not trying to create meme soundtracks. We're not trying to create happy birthday to your niece with novelty lyrics type music. This is purpose-built content for soundtracks to underscore video or underscore narrative audio. So we know a lot about the use case, and we try to make sure we do the best job there.
Yeah, and now that you've got the Adobe layers, you can take the music out from another background, use Firefly, I'm guessing, create your own sound, and then whack that straight back in. Yes.
Exactly. And you could create multiple variations, multiple versions. All that music that you're creating is commercially safe. You know that it's safe from any copyright strikes. So is adjustable to, I don't want to say millisecond precision, but like tenth of a second precision. We will figure out how long the content that you need is and make sure that the fade ins, the fade outs, and musically, it just works, that content.
Okay. Jay, thank you so much. Congratulations on your, nearly 3 years now, is it? Where are you now in the Adobe career?
Let's call it 2.5 fun and wonderful and very dynamic times in this industry. But, when you look at how quickly AI is changing, and also like, as a creator, which tool stack are you going to double down into? There's a lot of incredible tools out there, but I just love being at Adobe. I think our approach to ethical AI is one that I personally stand behind, but also the breadth of tools of going from simple ease of use with podcast all the way to Oscar-winning editorial tools that you could get in Premiere, and like everything in between is so fun. I learn so much every day.
Cool. If I want to know more and learn more myself, where would I go?
I would recommend everybody go to podcast.adobe.com. Check out the latest stuff that is shipping today, including the remote video recording and also the remove music and enhancement features within enhanced speech. Use that as your starting point, and then sky's the limit from there. Also, there's links to contact the team. There's a real team behind it. We read everything. Reach out anytime.
And when will we next see you in person? Will you be at Podcast Movement or the London Podcast Show? Where can we find Adobe?
I am hoping we'll have a good presence at the London Podcast Show.
Excellent. I can't wait to have a drink with you then. Jay, so good to see you again, my friend.
Always
Congratulations
a pleasure,
on everything. And yeah, we'll see you in London then.
Sounds good. See you, Sam.
The Pod News Weekly Review
with Buzzsprout.
Start podcasting, keep podcasting.
James Bumper, one of our friends, has always been talking about percent completed. They've done some research recently, James. What have they done?
Yeah, Bumper have a ton of very interesting research all about consumption and about completion. How long are people listening to individual shows? And also, are they actually consuming all of the show or just some of it or blah, blah, blah? And so, so they've analysed more than 100,000 episodes to discover that the average on Apple and Spotify, of course on YouTube it's much, much, much lower, but the average on Apple and Spotify is 76% of an episode has been listened. Now that number goes higher if you have a shorter show. So shows under half an hour, it goes up to 85%. So that's a significantly higher number. But yeah, I thought that was I thought that was a really interesting thing.
And of course, shows under 3 minutes, they get completely 100%, don't they, James?
Well, it's surprising that you say that because I had someone, Stephen DeVincenzi, he produces a podcast called Simple English News Daily, and he sent me a screenshot of his Apple Podcasts Connect screen saying I'm doing about 110% on average. Bet nobody can beat that. To which I replied, challenge accepted. and showed a view of Apple Podcasts Connect. You can actually go in there. You choose all time, and then you sort by average consumption. And the top show from the Pod News Daily, not the Pod News Weekly Review, because clearly this show. How long is this show? So from the daily sort of 3, 4, 5 minute show, the number one was a new threat to podcasters, extortion. Wow, that sounds exciting, which was an episode from 2019, which has an average consumption of 299%.
Wow, there you go.
I'm sure that's true. And the next one, Apple's accessibility and Gimlet's not changing anything. Wow, that's dated, isn't it? Again, from 2019, 216%. So, so that was quite funny.
Nice.
But yeah. So the shorter you go, obviously, the higher it gets. But it's still really interesting, I think.
Now, related to this, Dan Meisner, who's from Bumper, posted on LinkedIn that he appreciated the coverage that you and I did for the Apple recent video announcement. But he left you a question, James, which I'm not sure he asked you directly, but he did say, one aspect I'd love to better understand is how Apple's support for HLS video will impact podcast downloads. Apple's support material says that for video episodes, the audio for followed shows will be downloaded automatically, so users always have something to play offline. Now, he went on to say, but I'm not entirely clear what's getting downloaded automatically. The audio enclosure from the RSS feed, the audio-only rendition from the HLS stream. He's heard conflicting reports and he wanted an authoritative source. And of course, the GOAT jumps in. So, James, what was your reply?
I have the authoritative source because that is a question that I asked Apple. And Apple have given me an authoritative answer. So if you are using iOS 26.4 and you're using something which is capable of video, then it always uses HLS. Even if you're just listening on audio and you've said, I don't want to see the video, it still listens to the HLS because the audio is separate in the HLS multivariant playlist. And if you download a show that has video attached to it, you can download audio, which is the default. You can also download video, which is also available. And all auto downloads from iOS 26.4 will always come from that HLS multivariant playlist. What that means technically is it's probably going to be an AAC stream or an AAC file. Most people are using between 128 and 160K right now, but that's basically it. And so, no, you won't get anything different. And so it's just the same deal as Spotify. It's the same audio. It's the audio from the video file, if you like. But the way that HLS does it is much, much cleverer. So, that's basically what's going on there.
Nice. So why are we still talking about downloads? I'm sorry, I'm just confused.
Well, we're still talking about downloads because there are still a lot of people who like to be able to listen to shows without having to use their data. There is this thing in London, Sam, called the London Underground. And you won't believe this, but it's trains and they go underground.
You're not going to fool me on this one, James.
I know you've not got this in deepest, darkest.
My chauffeur's never told me about this.
But yes, and so from that point of view, that is obviously an obvious thing. I will be on a plane this time next week, and so my phone will be full of podcast
you're
ads.
Fine. You'll be 700 meg down and up. You'll be fine. Not on
Qantas, I won't be. So, but yeah, so all of that stuff, it's still important to people, and. My assumption is that Apple Podcast is still going to automatically download. That certainly seems to be the case because I'm on 26.4 already. So it's still an important thing. But of course, the important sort of part of all of this is that Apple Podcasts has all of the playback stats anyway. And so as long as there's an easy way to get those playback stats out of Apple Podcasts, and I don't know whether that's the case yet, but as long as there's an easy way to get those playback stats out of Apple Podcasts, then brilliant. That will, you'll get all of the play information there. You can ignore the downloads for the HLS because you'll be able to see the individual playback going on in the app.
I mean, I think what I would rather Apple did is not set the default to automatically download, right? Let people choose, but it's not Apple's way.
No, I mean it's not necessarily Apple's way at the moment. Although the default is going to be audio only and not video. So that's important. What does happen in the Apple Podcast app is that it stops downloading if you stop listening. And so what I'm finding, I use Apple Podcasts as my main podcast app, and one of the things...
That's all right. One day we'll get you to change. Hell may freeze over.
And one of the things that I've noticed is The Rest is Politics is now releasing such a ridiculous amount of episodes that I'm not listening to enough of them for Apple Podcasts to automatically download them, because it's just simply not a thing anymore. So I think that's certainly interesting. But I think if they were to just get rid of automatic downloads or stop that from happening instantly, I think that would cause the industry so much of a concern that it really isn't worth having a conversation about. I think it would terrify people, because there's still an awful lot of this industry that relies on downloads as being a relatively standard number. And all of a sudden, you'd probably cut those downloads by about 20% again if you were to do that. So, so you probably don't want to do that.
Well, interestingly, Steve Razors, who was the former EVP for podcasting and audio at Paramount, wrote a post which was entitled, "What if we've been doing podcasting wrong this whole time? Have we been measuring podcasting success wrong?" he says. He talks about reach versus engagement. He talks about reach being downloads, chart positions, network scale, and engagement being what? Again, Edison Research we're talking about, watch time, listen time, completion rates, retentions, which is what Bumper talk about as well. So he says, for most of its history, podcasting has optimized for one number, downloads. He says downloads drive the charts, downloads drive ad pricing. If a show hits 1 million downloads, then the headline is that it's a success. He says the dirty secret is that downloads are an imperfect metric. We know that because a download doesn't equal a listen. He says roughly 70% of listeners finish most or all of an episode, I think, again, which has been backed up by Edison Research. So, James, this article that Steve has written seems to say that, at least it backs up what Edison's being observing, how much people are listening. We've talked about how the download metric, or at least I have, the download metric isn't the key metric. Is it time? I mean, I know you just said what Apple are doing, but is it time to move away? He wants us to move away towards shares, watch time, retention, completion rates.
Yeah, of course he does. And here is the choice that we have as an industry. We can either put all of our podcasts into Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify and cut everything else off. True fans? No, absolutely not. Cut the whole lot off so that we've just got 3 places to put our podcasts. Then we can have exactly the numbers that he wants. Can't necessarily get engagement, but we can certainly get completion rate and retention rate, and we can't even get return behavior, but you know what I mean. We're sort of far closer to it. But then you've got Open RSS, and Open RSS is the reason why podcasting has been so successful. And you can't get the type of consumption metrics that you want to out of Open RSS. So you end up with a choice. Do you want to kill OpenRSS because of the 10% of shows that take advertising? Or do you want to keep OpenRSS because of the 90% of shows that don't? And Steve Raises would be perfectly happy for you to get rid of the 90% because he doesn't care about the podcasts that don't earn money from downloads. He only cares about the podcasts that earn money from downloads. He's a great guy. I like him a lot. But that's the choice that we're making. And it's a choice that, some people very loudly have been turning around and saying that they want to make. And we should just be mindful and aware that if our choice is to denigrate the download number totally and only look at completion, retention, and all of that kind of stuff, then we are handing the keys to the open podcast ecosystem to Apple, to Spotify, and to YouTube. And, and that may be where we're going. But I'm not sure that I'm entirely comfortable with that.
I'm not sure I agree with that in its entirety, James. I think what you're seeing is the existing legacy hosts only use downloads because they haven't moved to a metric that they can measure. So they're going to promote the download because it's the only thing they can do. I think you'll see, we have achieved it. Okay, we're nothing of nothing as true fans. I'll say that, right? We're nothing. We're not going to cause the needle to move right now, but we technically have achieved the ability to measure across all apps the plays, listen times, retention rates, consumption. So it's technically possible. And
you say you have.
Yeah.
And I think the difficulty with that claim is no one's seen how you're doing it. You've not published any information about how you're doing it. I said that. And we don't know how accurate those numbers are. They've certainly not gone through any IAB certification. So
they won't be going through it either, probably.
But if what you have done is correct, and what you have done is measuring things properly, then yes, we've got a fantastic move forward. I have no idea how it works out what a download is and what a play is, but we have, at least with that, understood that we've got a little bit more data there.
Yeah, look, I'm the first to say we're at step 1, step 2, right? But we are at the point. And the reason why we haven't published anything yet is because I'm not comfortable that we've got it exactly right. I won't go gung-ho until I've got everything completely right. But we're pretty close to it. And I'm not trying to say that, oh, wow, look at Truth. No, I'm saying the industry, if we can do it, then bigger players than us, like Buzzsprout, Captivate, certainly should be able to do it, right? So,
which almost leads to the question, well, why haven't they then? I mean, Omni Studio did for a while.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, well, what's going on there then?
Well, somebody said it. People like big numbers, right? Just bottom line, people like big numbers. Download numbers are always going to be bigger than your play numbers. And
yes, of course.
That's it, really. It's nice to say I've got, 10,000 downloads. I've got 600 plays. The number just, it doesn't sound as impressive. And if the industry is sold still on advertisers asking for that download number, then nothing changes. And I think it is a case of, when you look at Bumper's dashboard, they're trying to aggregate those numbers, but it's a difficult thing. We've talked about the APIs aren't open from Spotify and Apple. So it's not a kludge, that's unfair. There's a method that they're having to go in as the client to bring stuff back out and then aggregate. And that's one way of doing it. There's other people trying to do it. So I think maybe at the moment, the only people who have that first-party data are the big players, the Apples, the Spotifys, the YouTubes. But what I'm trying to say is, if Steve is right and Dan Meisner's right, and I think they both are, then those are the metrics we should be focusing on in the next generation of podcasting. And it's just technically how we're going to get to that point. And there is a model, there is a mechanism. I will publish more about it. But I do think that, this is an interesting inflection point where we're at. Yeah, I do.
No, I think, if we could get that data, then I think that would be really interesting. One shouldn't forget that, of course, the thing that really drives podcast numbers isn't necessarily the downloads of the whole show. It's the downloads of individual ads and how successful those are. And so, of course, you've got a whole sort of set of stuff going on there. And again, that's where the HLS interstitial, the way that they're doing the ads in Apple Podcasts going forward, is going to be really interesting because, again, we will actually get much more accurate data from the ads as well. May even be able to get things like skip data through the ads. So all of that, I think, is fascinating.
Now, from one former EVP to another, Steve Ackerman, he was the EVP and head of global podcasts for Sony Music. James, you know him, don't you?
I do, yes. He's a radio person for a long, long time. Used to head up a company called Something Else that made a ton of radio shows and a ton of podcasts. And yes, following that acquisition of Something Else by Sony Music, he ended up living in the US for a while, I think.
So I thought what would be nice to do is to catch up with Steve. And I started off by asking Steve what he's doing now and why he left Sony as the industry appears to be just taking off.
It was a really personal decision, and actually a lot of it really was personal because I was living in the States. I've got 3 adult kids, they're in London, so that was obviously a big driver, really. And look, I had an amazing time at Sony Music. It's full of amazing people. I have not got a bad word to say about them, but equally I spent 20 years being my own boss, and I felt it was time to get back probably to just being a bit more in charge of myself.
No, look, I understand that for personal reasons. Now, what are you doing with yourself at the moment?
I think you've already encapsulated it. I'm really acting as a board advisor to a bunch of businesses and a consultant. So I'm working with lots of different folks, both in the US and the UK, but really helping different businesses grow or take on different business challenges.
You've got a bit of an exclusive for us.
Yeah, well, just through serendipity of when we're recording this, it is now being announced that I'm joining the board, as in the company board of the podcast show, that much loved event, and I'm going to be helping them grow as a business, both within the UK and around the world.
It's that last bit you said, around the world. I will lay my cards down and say I'm a London boy. The London Podcast Show is a great show. I know Jason and Fergus have done an amazing job pulling that all together. My big worry, it matters not what I think, is that it will water it down if we do. The Americans won't come, then we'll suddenly have just the Brits in London, the Americans in America and wherever else you are. I worry that you're going to take the magic of the London Podcast Show away.
Well, I think that's a really fair thing to raise. And of course, I think I can speak on behalf of everyone at the podcast show when I say that's the last thing we want to happen to London. It's the jewel in the crown, it's the flagship. But the world's a really big place. And what's so exciting is our industry is becoming a bigger and bigger industry and is absolutely a global industry. And so I think having events around the world that can continue the conversation throughout the year and allow different folks to attend where maybe London is a long way to go or too expensive to go does throw open the opportunity to look at what else we can do.
Jason, I've spoken to on numerous occasions, who runs the London Podcast Show. 2 areas that I've always wanted him to evolve into. Given Jason's background with the BBC and given your background as a radio DJ and somebody who loves music, there is a whole area of independent musicians who are using podcasting RSS fundamentally to distribute their music. I would love there to be a way to get the musicians into that London Podcast Show in some format, even if it's a panel, even if it's a discussion. Because one of the things I find is the conversation will be video, AI, monetisation, rinse and repeat, and there'll be everyone having their different spin on it, but that's where we are. There's a whole area around music, and given Jason's background at the BBC as well, I wonder whether that could come into it. Now, I'm throwing my wish list at you just simply because you've announced it, so I'm allowed to do that. You don't have to answer any of this, by the way, but that's just me asking.
Well, no, I will answer because I think I'll say that I think one thing that Jason Carter and the team have just done so brilliantly over 5 years is the podcast show has continually evolved. I think anybody who was there for the first event and has been in subsequent years would hopefully agree with that. And of course, it will continue to evolve. And that means hopefully you bring in more and more different constituencies. I think, for instance, one constituency who I would expect to attend more in numbers this year than in previous years are those related to the TV industry. Of course, because of everything that's happening in video. We wouldn't have expected to necessarily see them at the podcast show a few years ago. So I'm sure it will continue to evolve with other constituencies getting involved. And of course, if we can find a valid reason why the music industry should be there, then I think that would make sense.
So let's move on then, given your background and the way that the podcast industry is moving towards video. We've seen YouTube adopt the podcasting world. We've seen Spotify. We saw the exclusives within Spotify come and go. Where do you see video at the moment as a podcaster? Is that something that you have to? Is it nice to do? Where are we?
Well, first of all, I think we need to come at video with just great optimism. I'm a little bit sniffy about the folks who get agitated about video and argue about, well, is it a podcast or not? Frankly, who really cares? The point is, it's allowing podcasters to reach new audiences on other platforms. And certainly all the research I've seen shows that video does not cannibalize audio. It's additive. It finds new folk. And that can only be great for the industry. Do you have to have video? Not for every show. But I think certainly if I was starting a regular show now, a weekly show, an always on show, I think you'd be pretty crazy not to be thinking about video. We've obviously got Spotify and YouTube in play. We know Apple's coming. In fact, the BBC, for those in the UK, have just announced today that they're extending what they do on the video side. And of course, it's going to keep on rolling out amongst other folks as well. So video has to be part of the ecosystem now. And it's a good thing it is. It's opening up new revenue streams. It's opening up new creative opportunities.
Do you think Spotify's video entry has been successful? It's now been going for over 12 months. What's your take on it?
I think it's been successful for those shows that are big enough to see a good return on revenue. I think the challenge with Spotify has been the mid-range, the lower-range shows. For some of those shows, it just doesn't make sense to put your show on video on Spotify. And I think the other potential challenge for Spotify is every 12 or 18 months there's a different strategy. And of course, that reflects the way the world's changing very quickly as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if on the video front, they have to make some adjustments again. And that's partly because they were one of the first movers, and so credit to them for that. But also because, obviously, as we just mentioned, other platforms are now evolving, are doing other things. And that's going to throw up questions for Spotify. So has it been a success? Well, I think credit to them for getting in there early and sort of forcing the hand of other folks. But I think it depends who you speak to. Some folks will say it's been really good for them, and other folks will say it hasn't been so useful.
Apple, they've just got into the video game. They've done it in a roundabout way. I think it's controlling the flow of video because they've gone to 4 partners. They're using an API. They're not using OpenRSS. What do you think Apple will do with this? Will it be a success, or do you think this is going to be something that they dip their toes in and, like Spotify, sort of drift along?
Well, I'm sure Apple are the same as most platforms. Of course, you want to look at what's the audience behavior and how is it impacting on the platform. I'm less bothered about the fact that a few partners are involved. First of all, they're big partners. They come with a lot of shows. And of course, you have to start somewhere. It's pretty difficult to roll something out immediately. But I think the Apple announcement's a really exciting one. First of all, the folks at Apple are really thoughtful. We shouldn't forget they've been supporters of the podcast industry for a long time, and they should get some credit for that. And on the video side, I think what they've announced is really exciting, especially because they're going to allow dynamic ad insertion. And I think that's a really important development. You know, YouTube announced that last year. They haven't announced when that's rolling out. But I think that's a really important development because ultimately I do think that can be a revenue game changer. At the moment, unless you really have huge amounts of views on YouTube, it's not a fantastic monetization channel. It's fantastic for getting views and marketing your show. It's not a fantastic way to make money if you're a medium or small size show, which of course the majority of the shows are. I think what Apple are offering, that chance for you to sell your own ads into video and to really maximize that inventory, because of course you can have different ads in different territories, or you can take an ad out and replace it with another one after a few months. I think that's a really big move, and I'm looking forward to hopefully when YouTube announce the date when they'll start doing that as well.
Spotify have a totally different model. They pay a percentage of revenue from the subscription. It's really interesting when you look at it. So Apple have pushed the onus back on to the hosting companies, the Acast, the AdWiz, to say, look, you serve the ads, you control that part of it. But then there's Apple taking a cut of that money. So they're making it a revenue generator. Whereas Spotify have done it the other way around. They're saying we're going to generate revenue from subscriptions and give you a percentage of that revenue. Do you think they will change that whole model now to mimic what Apple are doing and maybe bring other partners into the Spotify video market?
I think it depends on the confidence Spotify feel around their model, and that's something that's going to be very private to them internally in the discussions they have. Without doubt, Apple doing what they're doing, and as I said, if YouTube do roll out what they've said they're going to do, which is basically the same thing as Apple, I think potentially that does put Spotify a little bit on the back foot. However, we all know by now, don't bet against Spotify, because, all right, they're innovators and experimenters, and there's loads of things you can point to that sometimes they try and don't get right. But at the end of the day, there's plenty of things they have got right. And they've also been super important for the growth of podcasts and the podcast ecosystem. And I would love to be a fly on the wall inside Spotify and privy to the discussions they had, because genuinely, I'm not sure you or I can really call it. I think they're going to know what they're trying to develop as an ecosystem and how much they feel threatened or not by what Apple and YouTube are doing.
I think one of the telling things is there's no data coming out of them on success metrics. And that often tells me that it's not going the way they want. But we'll see. You're right. We're not privy to it. Now, one of the other things that you did before, you had a company called Something Else that produced a lot of content for radio, and then you went into multi-content production. So you were doing social media and podcasting. Given what the BBC have just announced, that companies who are independent podcast companies can now monetize that, would that have been a really big milestone win when you were running Something Else? Where's your take on it, given your background?
Yeah, it would have been really important. And frankly, for many years, we tried having discussions with the BBC around being able to monetize the content we were making away from the BBC. Admittedly, a different time. This is almost pre-podcasting, really. And even once podcasting started, I do remember a conversation that someone at Something Else had with a BBC exec, where the BBC exec said, what do you mean there's a market for you to take your shows to in podcasting? Of course there isn't. It's just us. And they could not get their heads around the fact that we were already speaking with companies in America, or obviously platforms like Spotify or Audible, about shows. So that's changed now. The BBC are definitely both feet in terms of podcasting. And I've always felt the BBC has a really special role in the UK creative ecosystem, which is to help the creative industries. They did a brilliant job of that with the TV independent production sector. They have done a good job of that with the audio production sector. But I felt as audio has become a space that can be more commercialized, where ad revenue becomes important, and of course where IP becomes important, I think maybe the BBC been a little bit slow reacting here. I know the discussions have been taking place for a long time. The will has been there, I know, from folks inside the BBC, but of course it's a slow moving beast. But I do think it's a real plus they're doing it now. It's only a positive, and it's only to be encouraged.
So one of the other players that's come into the market is Netflix. Left field, suddenly announced it. One of my takes is that Netflix is a nighttime platform. YouTube is a daytime platform for me. I know a lot of people now consume content on YouTube on their main screen, but Netflix have highlighted that YouTube is one of their biggest, if not their biggest competitor. Why have they gone into podcasting, and will it be a success in your opinion?
Well, I don't think I'm the first person to really describe what Netflix are doing as a chat show strategy. And when you look at what a traditional TV style chat show might have cost, if you look at the late night shows on US network TV, these are shows crewed up by 150 people, expensive hosts, big sets, live audiences. They're expensive shows to make. And yet really, when you break down the content, it's pretty similar to what podcasts are doing. In fact, you might argue inferior, because you get 5 or 10 minutes of conversation with a huge name, and then of course they move on to the next guest or the next feature, as opposed to exactly what we know with podcasts, that amazing ability to really have a very long conversation with someone in a way you may not have heard them before. So I think it's a fantastic move from Netflix. It's going to be really interesting to see if it performs for them. But of course, all the metrics are saying that screen consumption of podcasts is going up continually. And I'm not sure I quite agree with you about YouTube being a daytime medium and Netflix being a nighttime medium. I think particularly as you go into younger audiences, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think YouTube...
Being an old person, I wouldn't know that, yeah.
Well, and listen, I'm alongside you, 2 old fogies together, but when you look at lots of the research, it doesn't necessarily true. And so, of course, YouTube, if you see it in that context, actually becomes even more of a competitor with Netflix than I think even your question may have suggested. So it's absolutely the right strategy. And again, what a fantastic thing for podcasting, right? If ever there was an example of podcasting eating TV's lunch, or eating the lunch of TV production companies, this is it.
Something that always gets left out of this conversation is Amazon. I just never hear anyone on any podcast go, oh, and of course, Amazon are going to be able to do it. Never hear it. What's happening? Why is this sleepy giant not doing anything?
Well, I think Amazon is fascinating. In a way, we might have said the same about Apple until the announcement a few weeks ago. First mover advantage isn't necessarily an advantage when you're in this space, because of course Apple and Amazon and the like can throw huge amounts of resource at something as soon as they decide that's the direction they want to go in. So I would be amazed if Amazon don't do something in this space in the next, 12 to 24 months. But let's see. The point is, if they want to move, they can move pretty fast. And therefore, the fact they haven't done anything yet, I don't think it's a lack of indication of ambition going forward.
So now you can take your Sony hat off. Given your ability to look back, where does Sony fit in all this ecosystem?
That's a great question. I think Sony Music's focus, and certainly the brief I had and everything we tried to develop, was always on trying to develop an IP-focused business. And the aim for Sony Music was never to be the biggest player in the market, because they don't need to do that. They just need to prove the model. And I think we started to do that. And frankly, Sony Music is definitely one of the few businesses that is in both of the major markets of the US and UK. So there's lots of ways in which Sony Music's making the right impression. They're also one of the few places, I think, that has a full-service podcast business, by which I mean in-house creative, marketing, ad sales, subscription. And that allows that team to experiment in lots of different ways. So I would keep my eyes on what they're doing. They continue to be a really dynamic bunch of people with great leadership. And I certainly will be fascinated to see what comes next.
So given that you've had one foot in the US and thankfully haven't got a transatlantic accent, you're back home. I've heard you say that America is dynamic, it's a bigger market. But when I look at the UK market, I look at Goalhanger, I look at Persophonica, I look at Crowd Network, I look at all the satellite production companies around that, I look at PodX, the London Podcast Show. It's a real buzz over here in the UK. There's a real energy. So why can't we compete with America? What's holding us back?
Well, I don't think it is that we can't compete. I think you just can't underestimate the size of the market in the States. And this is obviously not just a podcasting thing. This is true for any industry, right? It is just huge and ginormous. And therefore, frankly, you can have a medium-sized show in the States and earn really phenomenal money out of that show in a way that is more difficult here. We all know that folks like Goalhanger want to break the States. They've got the rest of history that does well over there, but I think they haven't had many other shows that have really penetrated over there, and that's, I'm sure, be part of the churn in investment. And the challenge now is really, can some of those companies start to create shows and content that can appeal to US audiences? So the scale is a big thing. I also feel that for a lot of our production sector, and this doesn't apply to Goalhanger, but it does apply to some production companies, there's still that reliance on the commissioned model, as opposed to the willingness to back yourself or to go out and raise money so that you can release your own shows. Persophonica, great example where they're doing that. But I think in the States, you see that far more often. People willing to venture, to back themselves. There is an easier ability to raise money, so that's certainly true. But they go in with a mindset of, I want to create a business that has value, that has IP, as opposed to here, where I think a number of production companies have gone in with a view of, I want to earn money. And that's not quite the same as creating value in a business.
I come from an entrepreneur background. I've been in the UK entrepreneur space for about 30 years. And one of the biggest challenges is, you talked about raising money. It's fascinating that Goalhanger went US to raise their money. They didn't raise it in the UK. I think that is one of the biggest things that holds back the UK, is the VC scene in the UK. It's all focused on financials and fintech. If you're Revolut, you'll raise billions. But if you're a podcast company, I don't think you can raise the numbers. I saw this morning a company raise 5 million for a little badge device. And it's like, how can you raise $5 million for that? And yet you try and raise that in the UK, they wouldn't give you 50p in a Mars bar.
Look, the stereotype is true. There is a greater risk-taking culture there. There is an easier access to money. There's much greater levels of wealth. You cannot believe what wealth looks like until you live in the States and see what the very wealthiest, the sort of lifestyle that the very wealthiest can sort of buy. And I'm not saying that as a positive or negative, it's just an observation. But there is an easier route to money. And it is true, VCs here, I think, are not so willing to take risks. But of course, part of that is also the ambition we have as an industry. And I'd really encourage folks to get away from the slightly, certainly in the UK, the slightly inward-looking mentality. And I do think one thing that folks in the States do really well, and I've mentioned this a few times, is they're great at puffing their chest out and looking upwards and being ambitious. And actually, when you look at the UK, I think you could apply this to some degree around Europe as well, but certainly the UK is a creative powerhouse across multiple industries, including the podcasting industry. We are home to the greatest filmmakers, musicians, TV producers, audio producers, script writers, authors. The list goes on and on. We're a fantastic creative nation. And I would like folks in the UK to slightly look upwards and realise that with that comes the ability to achieve great things. Look, in the Something Else days, we were able to just do the obvious, which was to say, say there's money in the state. Let's see if we can pick up work there. And we opened up an office there. We had 2 or 3 people working there because we could see there was an opportunity there. And so it is also on the shoulders of folks who run businesses or would like to run businesses to have that ambition also and to look outward and to think, how can I grow my business and where is the opportunity?
The last hot topic that everyone's talking about currently is AI. Not in the production sense. I don't think that's a problem. And you've got people who use it to create transcripts, to do things like Apple with timed links. You do things like creating show notes. That's all a great use of what I call assisted intelligence, AI. But there's a lot now that's coming around with voice-related AI, and Inception Point AI is one of those companies that is churning 3,000 plus podcasts out a week. It really is the definition of slop, but that isn't going to be the only place where AI voice is used. Where do you sit on the fence of AI?
Well, I don't think when you work in a creative industry like ours, you can be a Luddite in the sense of putting your hands on your ears and just saying, I'm not going to join in the conversation. We all know within the way we're all working that AI is bringing lots of positive things just in the basic ways that we work, research or writing or whatever. I think when it comes to creativity, I do think AI has something to offer. I'm fascinated with what that can mean for translation and putting shows into different languages. I'm fascinated for what that can mean in terms of speed of movement around editing. Already a bunch of companies that I know are certainly using AI for the generation of their social media assets, which obviously, again, allows them to be properly multi-platform production companies without necessarily incurring crazy costs. So I think there's lots of positive ways in which creativity can be applied. Do we want AI slop with 3,000? I'm definitely on the side of the argument that says no, but that's because I'm a defender of creativity and I always will be. We're a creative industry and creative always has to come first on everything that is done. Ultimately, we're about serving audiences, and I don't think serving audiences is giving them something to listen to or watch that frankly isn't very good.
Now, last question. Given your time in Sony and you were looking outbound towards the industry, one of the areas that I spend a lot of my time in, and James and Adam Curry and Dave Jones and many other people, is in what we've termed podcasting 2.0. I'm always curious because we are slightly myopic in our view. We're talking about it all the time in this small little niche group. Does it actually resonate outside to people like you and Sony when you were there, or is it, oh, what's that? No, not bothered, move on, until it gets to Apple adding transcripts or Apple adding chapters which came out of the work from that group? Is it just an annoyance or a background noise, or do you actually take note of any of that stuff going on?
No, I think it's a bit of both. Innovation comes in lots of different shapes and sizes. I'm a massive believer in innovation and just constantly looking for improvement. And again, I think as long as we keep our eyes on the prize, which is not about what makes us as producers or as an industry feel good, it's about the audience. Always got to be about the audience. And so when you look at things like chapterization or transcript, well, frankly, if that helps the audience to consume in a better way, then of course it's a good thing. And of course it should be part of the conversation. And therefore, anyone who's having those conversations should be encouraged. It's a positive thing.
Last but not least, then, Steve, where are you going to be in the world? Are you going to be at Podcast Movement? Are you going to be in South by Southwest, the London Podcast Show? Where can we find you next?
I'm definitely going to be at the podcast show, seeing as now part of the team. I think for the next few months, I'll be giving a few other events a skip, only because having lived outside the UK for a few years, I had a lot of time on aeroplanes and I'm quite happy to have a few months less so. I'm going to see how things settle down with other events, but I think in my mind, there were some podcast events that have become less valuable than others. So we'll see how things settle down there. But I'll certainly be at the podcast show. I'll certainly be at a few other sort of creative industry related events like Ad Week. So yeah, come and say hi. If you're listening today and we haven't met before, come and say hi to me.
Lovely. Dave Ackerman, thank you so much. Congratulations on a wonderful career so far. Congratulations on the move into the London Podcast Show. I think that's going to be an exciting move for you. Well done.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
podcastshowlondon.com is where to get tickets. Both Sam and I will be there recording this very show, in fact. So you should definitely come along to that.
Now, in the No Shit Sherlock, Netflix has announced something that we knew would happen, or at least it's come out. Bloomberg's reporting it. Moving over to Netflix seems to be bad news for creators, at least those who want to reach a large number of people. Could have told you that. It's saying that with new subscribers dropping by 50% for many channels. James, why did anyone want to do this?
Yes. Well, you would kind of expect that new subscribers are going to drop significantly if you stop putting your main shows on those channels on YouTube. But why would anybody want to get onto Netflix? Well, because Netflix sounds good, doesn't it? And also Netflix pays you a lot of money. So therefore, let's take the money, and it matters a little bit less in terms of total numbers. But I just think, it doesn't really come as a surprise. And it's interesting. I mean, this is the only data so far that Ashley Carman seems to have been able to get hold of in terms of consumption data there. One would assume that if Netflix had some pretty good consumption data in terms of the podcasts that were on the service, we would have heard about it by now. And the fact that they haven't sent any to Ashley or to the Hollywood Reporter or to whoever, says that maybe there's something interesting going on there.
Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, said Einstein. And I think that's what we're going to see with Netflix, copying the Spotify exclusive strategy. But we'll find out. Now, their CFO, Spencer Newman, said on Netflix, video podcasts are watched more on mobile and watched more during the day. So is that achieving their goals, or is he manifesting forward what he would like them to achieve?
Well, let me quote him entirely correctly. Our video podcasts are over-indexing on time of day, like morning and afternoon, relative to our core subscription TV film on-demand offering. Similarly, podcasts are over-indexing on the mobile device, so that's pretty cool. So they're being watched more on mobile, but not necessarily the majority of watching is on mobile, if you see what I mean.
Aaron Nissenblatt responded to this, I thought, was brilliant. It's because you can put your phone in your pocket, unlike your TV, and take it on the go to listen. That's the answer.
Yes, and, you would kind of, yes, exactly, you would kind of expect that. But yeah, I think Netflix... clearly, they need to tell a good story about their podcast acquisition stuff so far, which is still only in the US. You can't watch any podcasts anywhere else in the world, which is weird. I think that Netflix, you'll be able to watch The Rest is Football for a little bit over the World Cup, a bit more globally, but we'll see how all of that bit works. But clearly Netflix needs to release some numbers. But the fact that they are releasing numbers that are so clouded in, over-indexing on the time of day says that it's not necessarily doing very well for them. And what happens to podcasting if Netflix turns around in a year and says, actually, podcasts are shit, aren't they? We'll get rid of them. It won't look very good for us.
Well, yes, indeed. Now, Netflix failed to purchase Warner Brothers. No surprise. The company has been given a spare $2.8 billion by Paramount.
Yes.
What are they going to do with it, James?
Well, what are they going to do with it? That's a great question. Max Cutler has written a long article, which, kudos to him. He's written a long article for the Hollywood Reporter, basically saying, I'm your man. I've got lots and lots and lots of ideas for you if you want to buy PAVE with your $2.8 billion. And why not? Absolutely. He suggests short-form content. He says that Quibi was just too early. And brave of him to pull up Quibi. But anyway, he says that Quibi was just too early, but, short form content is a thing. Content from creators. So stop having big studios in the middle and look at creator-led content. And also taking popular podcast exclusive, because that worked so well on Spotify. So
hang on a minute, it worked well for Max Cutler. He got bought by Spotify, didn't
he? Yeah, well, yes, it did. It worked very well for him. So, but good on him for thinking, this is what I should do. And of course, he's big enough that if he contacts the Hollywood Reporter and he says, I've got some ideas of what Netflix should do with their cash. Do you want this as an article? The Hollywood Reporter turns around and says, oh, yes. Yeah. So I think from that point of view, it all worked. So congratulations to Max for that. Talking about Spotify, where Max Cutler was, because of course he used to head up Parcast. they have given a new set of creator milestone awards to podcasters, including a Spotify Creator Milestone Award to Spotify's Bill Simmons. Well done, Bill Simmons.
There you go.
Yes. Only one new podcast managed to reach gold, which you need 500 million streams for, and that is the true crime show Morbid. But they have some more gaudy awards on their desk, so congratulations to them. They're also doing things to do with K-pop videos, which is all very exciting, which my daughter will be thrilled about. And then finally, did you hear what Louis Theroux said about podcasts? This is brilliant.
Go on, play it.
This is absolutely brilliant. This is his introduction to a show that he did with Jimmy Carr, as a matter of fact, and he started it by saying,
"Hello there, and welcome back to the Louis Theroux podcast, or if you're watching it on Spotify, the Louis Theroux Slightly Shit TV show."
Slightly shit TV show.
I could see the Spotify PR people spilling their lattes now.
Yes. And Louis Theroux is paid to do that show by Spotify.
No.
Brilliant.
But at least he's honest.
At least
that's
he's honest.
what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, what was it? The Netflix show that has no RSS feed, that has the SAG-AFTRA podcast agreement.
Pete Davidson. Yes.
That's another shit TV show as well.
Well, I mean, it might be a good TV show. Who knows? But it certainly isn't a podcast.
Right.
How much we can tell you.
People News on the Pod News Weekly Review.
Yes, in terms of people and jobs, Cumulus Media has filed for bankruptcy. As you know, in America, filing for bankruptcy is just a piece of paper.
Clean the decks.
Well,
clean the decks.
It's not really, is it? It's just a piece of paper. And they go, oh, look, we're in bankruptcy now. We've got Chapter 11 protection. We'll get rid of $600 million worth of debt. And that's basically it. So nobody will really lose any jobs or anything else. And it's no surprise that Cumulus Media has filed for bankruptcy. All of their competitors have in the last decade. In fact, even Cumulus itself last filed for bankruptcy less than 10 years ago. iHeartMedia also filed for bankruptcy, and Odyssey, of course. And so Cumulus Media is there again. I have foolishly signed up to the alert system in the US bankruptcy court. They're in the amount of emails. It's a big old company, and the amount of emails that I'm getting is quite fascinating. But yes, some of those emails will contain some really interesting stuff. So I'm looking forward to the really interesting ones. And Apple Podcast has a job going. If you would like a job at Apple Podcasts, I think it's at California. I think it's at Culver City. I don't think it's at Cupertino, but I could be wrong there. Anyway, they are looking for an audience-minded and innovative expert with genuine video expertise to work as their content strategy and programming manager. Would you like to know how much you will get paid if you get this job?
James.
It's anywhere between $121,000 and $230,000 American dollars.
Right. Where am I applying?
Plus benefits. Where are you applying? podnews.net/jobs.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that's going to be fascinating to help inform and editorialize our new video podcast offering. Now, you might ask yourself, and I think that this would be a sensible question to ask, why are they only doing this now when they could have been hiring somebody, obviously not mentioning the word video, but they could have been hiring somebody 4 or 5 months ago so that they would be able to start on day one with the brand new Apple Podcasts fancy new video thing. So I'm a bit confused about that one, but yes, your report...
Well, no, it would have let the cat out of the bag, wouldn't it? I mean, if they'd said we want a Apple Podcast video expert.
Oh, well, yes, of course, but they could have been looking for a content strategy and programming manager and not used the video word. I'm sure that would work. They appear to be reporting to the head of content strategy and programming of Apple Podcasts. Do you know who that is?
No.
No, me neither. But I don't appear to be able to see anything that says who that person is. So There we are. Oh, hang on a minute. There is someone here, and it's somebody that we've never heard of. Wow. Somebody who we've never heard of. Have you ever heard of Greg Herman?
Nope.
No. Me neither. As head of content strategy and programming at Apple Podcasts, I help people discover podcasts they'll love. Our team recommends and curates shows and episodes across Apple Podcasts to help listeners find something new and help creators reach new audiences.
It doesn't really matter. He'll never do an interview. Why should I care?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I have put in, again, a request to...
Do I need to retract that now?
Well, I've put in a request to Apple, and I've said, you've got so many good programming people across the world. You've got people in Canada who I've met, you've got people in the UK who I've met, you've got people in Australia who I've met, you've got some really, really good people. This is your secret sauce as a podcast app, is the fact that you have all of these very talented content people in your company. I would really like to spotlight some of them and talk to them about what makes for a great podcast and blah, 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 blah. And Apple has said, oh, that's interesting. When are you thinking of doing that? And I said, well, any time that works for you. And they said, okay, well, we'll think about it. I'm sure that they will.
Don't hold your breath is what I'd say.
Well, I'm sure that they'll hopefully come back to me at some point in the future. But yes, so
not
anyway,
before you're 60.
Greg Herman, that's his name. Right, let's have a look at awards and events then, shall we?
Go on then.
South by Southwest, of course, happening next week, and Podcast Movement is there. Podcast Movement Evolutions, Sounds Profitable is there. If you want my advice, turn up early. Make sure you're on the list, first of all. Go to podcastmovement.com and turn up early. If you've got a South by Southwest badge, then even better, because you'll be able to skip a bit more of the queue there. But my understanding is there's more people than there is space. So go in as early as you possibly can. Elsewhere going on, and by the way, Sam and I will not be there, sorry. So elsewhere going on, Empowered Podcasting Conference 3. That's a good name, isn't it? That has a confirmed title sponsor. It's in Charlotte in North Carolina in the US in mid-August, and it's got a confirmed title sponsor of Ralph Estep Jr., the content creator's accountant. And why do we know about Ralph Estep Jr.? Well, he's also a power supporter for this very show, and he's also a supporter for the Pod News Daily as well. So Ralph, thank you so much for what you do for the industry, and thank you for being the title sponsor for the Empowered Podcasting Conference. I have heard so many good things about that conference. Yes, if I can work out how to get there, I will, but I need to work out how to get there, so that's a thing. And next week is Podcast-thon, which is a big week for podcasting. Lots of people supporting this, but also lots of people doing specific shows about your favourite charity. That's all you have to do. There's more information at podcastthon.org.
And just add Captivate, congratulations for being the supporter and sponsor of it as well.
Yes, indeed.
The tech stuff on the Pod News Weekly Review.
Yes, it's the stuff you'll find every Monday in the Pod News newsletter. Here's where Sam talks technology.
Well, I'm going to ask you some questions, James. It's been an interesting go to the source. Now, there's been some interesting debates on the GitHub related to transcripts. And one of the questions that's floating around is, at the moment, the transcript tag has multiple formats: text, HTML, SRT, VTT. And the question was, should we now adopt one single format, which is VTT, which is what Apple support? Should we replace the JSON format, which is currently popular amongst Podcasting 2.0 apps, and just have one? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think from my point of view, what I am keen to do is to look at what people are doing in terms of the podcast transcription tag in this particular case, and then work out, is there something that we should be doing with the specification to make it easier, to make it simpler. And so in the current guise of the podcast transcription tag, then you can produce a transcript in SRT format, in TXT format, in HTML format, in JSON format, and in Web VTT format. My proposal would be to get rid of most of those. Get rid of the SRT file, because that is not as helpful as the VTT file. VTT files are supported by browsers. They are supported by all kinds of things. It's very easy, by the way, to make an SRT file from a VTT file, but just make it simpler for those of us who are making shows, but also those of us who are making podcast apps and everything else. Just get rid of the SRT file because we don't need it, and just have a VTT file in there. Similarly, getting rid of a text-only version of the transcript, you can build that from the VTT file if you really want to. That might be useful as well. So there's a lot of sort of simplification there, just making it easier. Instead of following the rather complicated spec as we do now, let's make the spec simpler and easier. We lose nothing from that. And that should be a good thing for all of us, I think.
Now, WebVTT has chapter support, but we also have 4 chapter formats as well. So what do you reckon we should do there?
Well, WebVTT has chapter support. The chapter support, my understanding is, isn't supported particularly well in browsers. And anyway, the point of chapters is that in VTT, you can label a chapter name, but you can't add links to it. So it's not actually capable of what we would want in terms of podcast chapters. We already have 3 different chapter formats. I really don't want a 4th one. And so to make something which is easier and simpler for everybody to code to does not include adding a 4th chapter to the 3 standards that we are already using in the podcast world. So please know, your web VTT is there as your captions file, and that's what it's there for.
Okay. Now, here's one that I saw. Dave Jones posted about it on Mastodon. Castro Podcasts, who have their own podcasts, have launched another app called Podseek. Did you have a look at this one, James?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yes, why are they doing that instead of shoving that code into...
Well, I did download Podseek, and fundamentally, disappointed is the summary, I'd say. When I read it takes full advantage of podcasting 2.0, gives the richest possible experience to get from an RSS feed and includes transcripts, funding, person tags. I was going, great, new app. Let's have a look at it. And then I downloaded it, and it was basically taking, I don't know if you recall, Spotify had a trailer feed that you could do on the mobile where you could flick through horizontally.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, vertically. Yeah. And, a bit like a Tinder or bit, whatever. And you then say, oh, I like this one, add it to my playlist. They've taken that concept for discovery by using AI to do a little bit about what PodShrink did, which is what we talked about last week, giving you a summary of the show, and then you go, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll listen to that one. That seems very clever, but then you get into the actual app and it's very, very basic, is the only way I can describe it. And some of the RSS 2.0 features or podcasting 2.0 features are missing that I couldn't see. So I don't know if it's this is our alpha trial testy stuff that we're going to be doing. We're going to throw it out the front door and then we're going to bring it into Castro as part of the main product, or vice versa. We're building this new version of a product and we'll deprecate Castro once this version is fully up and running. I don't know which way they're going.
Well, the one thing that you will be able to do with Podseek is it uses the foundation models on your iPhone, the AI on your iPhone, to do various things about, answers pulled from, what does Adam Curry think about this? or what does Joe Rogan think about this? Because it's gone through, it's already produced all of the transcripts automatically. It can then use that as a training set of data and all of that. But there's nothing particularly unusual about that. There have been products available for that for many years now. So I'm not sure that it's a particularly exciting thing, but always good to see new apps. So worthwhile taking a quick peek at Podseek if you want to. The Castro, of course, the benefit of Castro building it is that Castro already has all of the boring podcast stuff is already done. The podcast directories and the links to RSS feeds and all of that stuff is already done. So this is essentially a bunch of new ideas put over an existing podcast app.
Watch this space. And finally, friends of the show, Headliner has added a social media scheduler, allowing you to control when and how your podcast and video content is shared across different platforms.
Boostergram, super comments,
zaps,
fan mail, super chats,
and email.
Our favorite time of the week, it's the Pod News Weekly Review inbox.
Yeah, so many different ways to get in touch with us. Fan mail by using the link in our show notes, or boosts, or email, and we share any money that we make as well. 2 boosts this week from the Ugly Quacking Duck. Thank you, Bruce, using Podcast Guru. 2 sats, so it's another row of ducks. And he says, I'm running a week behind on episodes. I am still here and glad you two are also. Thank you for the episode 73. And that's very kind of you. Bruce, thank you for that. Do we have any messages in True Fans as well?
We do. Seth Goldstein sent us 142 sats and said, great interview. Spotify should be watching very closely to what Apple is doing and they will adjust. Time will tell. And I think that's when we were talking about changing Spotify's model to more like Apple's API model.
Yes.
Silas sent us 222 sats. I actually had to pause the show because I was in a store when you played that AI summary. I started smiling like an insane person due to how dry and off-putting that AI summary was. There you go.
Yes.
Silas went on to say, I'm hard at work on my app. I think this was it's still the same one, but it's from this week's show. None of you saw my leak of how my search engine works. I posted on podcastindex.social. That was a couple of weeks back after James mentioned some search thing where he couldn't find himself. Right. There you go.
Oh, well, there you go. Silas, thank you for that. Thank you also, Martin Lindeskog, who said his goal is to adhere to the gamification of the leaderboard on True Fans and try and catch up with superfan Neil Velio in the near future. Correct. This is exactly what you should be doing. Maybe it could happen around my birthday, the end of May. Maybe it could happen around my birthday, Martin, which is next week. I'm glad to see that you have the ducks in a row, James and Sam, with or without the trivia fact-checking stuff. It's good to hear that you have an AI editor. Not so sure about that bit. But yes, thank you, Martin. That's very kind of you. And again, another row of ducks from you as well.
There's a great program on Radio 4, which is you've got to sneak 7 facts into a 30-second conversation piece, and then people have got to work out if those facts are true or false. Maybe we should try that in this show. I think who knows?
Who knows? That might be a good thing. Yes. I wonder who would play the part of David Mitchell. Thank you also to our power supporters. Rachel Corbett is one of those. Also, Rocky Thomas is one of those. Ms. Eileen Smith, Claire Waite Brown is also one as well. It's good to see you all supporting us, and thank you for doing that during International Women's Month. And you too can be a power supporter. Just visit weekly.podnews.net. We really appreciate that help. That keeps us going, and that's an excellent thing. This isn't part of the big Pod News conglomerate. This is just Sam and I. So thank you for doing that too. And what's happened for you this week, Sam?
Well, I don't know if you listened to it, but I listened to Katie Law's podcast interview with Justin Jackson. Obviously, she was on the show last week where you interviewed her.
She did an interview with Justin about Podcasting 2.0 and the Apple video announcement. But what I found most interesting was it was on Substack. It was a live podcast, video podcast. And then after that, it was available as a private feed. And then eventually it was in her RSS feed. So I think it's just obviously something that I'm watching closely, what Substack does. But I like the fact that it was live, and it's interesting because, lots of YouTube people do live as well. We talked about Podbean getting rid of their live. So I don't know. I just think it's an interesting model. And if you have a look at her Substack as well, she's using, certain episodes are paid episodes as well. So again, a bit like Supercast, a bit like Patreon. I see this as where I see the next generation of podcasting for me is, audio, video, and paid subscriptions. So
yeah, no, it is. It's very good. It's very good. Well worth a listen. Pod the North is the podcast that you need to go and find. And anything True Fans that you want to tell us? Anything that you're launching next week? I'm sure that you're launching something next week.
Well, no, I can't launch it until you get a press release. So press release on its way. Yes, we are ready to launch our video hosting. So we're going to be doing that at $30 a month. And it's MP4 based, and it is streaming. And yes, I will document it before you ask. And I'm going to send you a link after this so you can see a demo of it. But yes, we've been working hard on that. So video hosting from True Fans coming up next week.
Excellent. Very nice.
James, what's happened for you? Come on, I've got this really weird URL in front of me.
Yes, you do. It's a thing called an XTE Ink. Mm-hmm. It's an X4. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little ebook reader. And it's very, very cheap as well, $69. So really, really cheap. It's a really nice little thing. And the reason why I thought I would mention it is firstly because I got one of these a couple of months ago, because of course I did. But also secondly, it's fascinating how these things work, because essentially the firmware is pretty awful. The software on it is pretty bad. It's not a good user experience. But someone else has worked out how to write the firmware for it and has written some really nice firmware called Crosspoint, I think. So he's written some really nice firmware which does a really, really good job. And it really is the difference between a really not very good product and a product which is excellent to use. And the weird thing is that difference has been done by some guy who is just doing an alternative firmware for fun. And I just find that fascinating. And the parallels between this little e-ink reader device and podcasting is, I think, really interesting, where you've got people who are making not very good things, but as part of their big companies and everything else. And then you've got a bunch of people within Podcasting 2.0 and elsewhere who are going, okay, well, what can we really do here? How can we really play with this? And I just find it fascinating that this is happening in the hardware world as well. But yeah, if you're looking for a tiny little, it's about half the size of your big iPhone, Pro Max. It's got a MagSafe ring on the back, so it can actually clip onto your iPhone if you want it to. Tiny little thing. But it's really good as a little ebook reader that you can stuff in your pocket, and you don't have to, carry a bag around. You can just stuff it in your pocket, and if you're waiting for the bus or you're waiting for the train or whatever, you can just read a couple of pages. It's brilliant and works really, really well. So, hurrah for them, so far as I'm concerned.
Nice. Yes, I'm not sure I'll be purchasing one, but very nice.
No. Well, because you can't read, obviously, so you have to use Audible to get somebody to read for you.
Me and the Donald.
Yes. Anyway, that's it for this week before we go diving into politics. All of our podcast stories taken from the Pod News daily newsletter at podnews.net.
Yeah, you can support this show by streaming sats. You can give us feedback using the Buzzsprout fan mail link in our show notes. You can send us a boost or become a power supporter like the 23 power supporters at weekly.podnews.net.
Our music is from the excellent TM Studios. Very much looking forward to seeing Chris from TM Studios next week in Riga in Latvia. That should be fun. Our voiceover is Sheila D. Our audio is recorded using CleanFeed. We edit. Should have edited that out. Still, there we are. We edit with Hindenburg. Nick will be in Riga as well. So looking forward to seeing him. And we're hosted and sponsored by Buzzsprout. Start podcasting. Keep podcasting.
Get updated every day. Subscribe to our newsletter at podnews.net. Tell your friends and grow the show.
And support us.
The Pod News Weekly Review will return next week. Keep listening.